Well, for more on the dynamics of China-U.S. trade, I spoke with Gary Locke, former U.S. ambassador to China. I asked him about the momentum behind the two countries' trade relationship.
China is America's largest export destination outside of North America. China is our #1 export destination in terms of all that we grow and process from our farms. And for America, China exports more to America than to any other country combined, including to all of the EU countries. So we are benefiting from this economic integration and actually helping improve the quality of lives for both peoples.
Now, as you said, very closely integrated countries and economies. So with that being said, are there any changes or trends that you're seeing when it comes to things that people should perhaps be paying more attention to?
Well, obviously, the slowdown of the Chinese economy should be of concern to Americans because, quite frankly, there's a huge demand for made-in-America, high-quality goods and services, whether it's our medical devices to the food that we grow because it's pure, it's clean, it's high quality, to even environmental services. And as the Chinese economy cools, that may mean less demand for some of these great American products, and therefore less exports, and therefore fewer American jobs. So we have a great interest, America should have a great interest in terms of how well is the Chinese economy doing. Just as the Chinese are always concerned about the American economy because they know that the more that Americans are working, the more money they have in their pockets, the more they buy. And quite frankly, a lot of what they buy, whether it's at the department store or electronic stores, are made in China.
Now, another area of cooperation is obviously energy, and both countries have made very strong commitments to curb emissions as regards to the Paris climate talks. Now, when it comes to how significant this is, when it comes to China's economy, how big of a deal is this change?
Well, this is very, very large, and it's going to be very tough for the Chinese economy to move away from all the coal that they burn to produce electricity for homes or the coal they use to produce energy, whether steam or power for the factories. China is the largest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world, although Americans produce more greenhouse gases per person than any other country in the world. And so it's important for both America and China to get serious about climate change, to really work together to reduce these carbon emissions. China is developing so many new nuclear power plants to try to reduce their dependence on coal. They have more solar power plants and wind turbines than any other country. But still, they have such a huge need for electricity, especially for the people in the countryside who don't even have regular-sized refrigerators or washing machines or microwave ovens, and so they need that electricity. That's where also the United States can help China with our technologies, our energy efficiency devices and programs, technology that can help them move to a clean energy future while also providing jobs for the American people.
Now, this push by both countries to move to cleaner energy came under President Obama's administration, and as you know, in the U.S., we are now in an election year. So with that being said, how is that uncertainty about who's going to be leading the U.S. affecting the relationship with China?
Well, the Chinese are obviously watching with great interest who the next leader of the United States will be, but they also realize that despite Democratic and Republican administrations over the last several decades, U.S.-China policy has remained fairly consistent, has been fairly even, and has constantly improved. All bets may be off, however, depending on who the Republican nominee might be. But nonetheless, I think both parties, Democrats and Republicans, know how important the U.S.-China relationship is for the world as well as for the United States.
And when it comes to that relationship between the U.S. administration, are there any sort of changes that you'd like to see going forward, like key areas where you think that the U.S. and China could really promote more cooperation?
Well, obviously, there's a lot of cooperation going on right now on many, many fronts, cultural, educational, scientific, and business ties. I think many people do not understand or are not aware of the large and extensive amount of cooperation at the scientific level. People working together to try and find cures for some of the world's most dreaded diseases, attacking, for instance, this new strain of tuberculosis, which has become resistant to many of the current drugs, to even various ailments.
You've had these trade missions that have been between China, Asia, Mexico, Europe, several countries, and you've really tried to build those ties between Washington State and the U.S. But then, Outside of the Beltway, it's a very different story. You're seeing that in Washington, D.C., you're having this very pessimistic anti-China rhetoric in some cases for some candidates. And then the individual states, it's a very different. They really want to build that relationship with China. Just quickly, help us understand why there is that disconnect.
Well, I think that you find at the state level, you find governors who are going on trade missions and visiting these other countries, promoting the products and the companies and the services offered within their state, and they understand that if they're able to export these services, these products, whether it's agricultural goods to medical devices or environmental technology or environmental expertise, that means jobs for the people of those states. And they understand the value of exports and of trade. I think that, and they've been able to travel to these countries and see just how much people all around the world want these made in USA goods and services, and how the USA brand stands for quality. I think that some of the people in D.C. have never been to China or other countries around the world, and I think they would really benefit from visiting these countries, experiencing the culture, understanding the differences, as well as appreciating the huge challenges that a lot of these developing countries like China face.